To the 5 a.m. Mester Scrum evening edition. We're going to be doing a series of interviews weekly about 8 o'clock on Thursday nights. Going to post them up there, figuring people may be home or in the office on Fridays and they want to watch some extra stuff. So this will be some good interviews that we have. Tonight's going to be with myself and Dave Schneider, who is the host of the Philly Tech Entrepreneurs Connect podcast. And this was broadcast on January 18th, 2024, but I'm reposting it on our site on the 5 a.m. Mester Scrum site. It's part of the intro just to get the algorithms primed up for a weekly interview series with myself, people in the change community, agile community, product owners, scrum masters, managers, people who work in the agile community, and anybody who's inspired by making change in the world and people. So I got a bunch of interview people that are dying to get interviewed and share with you their thoughts on change. And we'll start off tonight with myself being interviewed by Dave Schneider, part of the Philadelphia Entrepreneurs Tech Group. They have a local meetup here in Philadelphia, and I just thought it'd be nice to share when I was getting interviewed to be on the other side. So with that, hope you enjoy it. We're going to do this every Thursday night, and take care.
Hey everyone, Dave here with another episode of the Philly Tech Connect podcast for the PTE, Philly Tech Entrepreneurs community. Today I'm here with Mr. Greg Mester. He is an agile cheerleader freelancer from Philadelphia, an agile coach, the host of the 5 a.m. Mester Scrum podcast, which is the third ranked agile coaching podcast as of speaking. Greg, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, and thanks for having me on, Dave.
Pleasure.
It's always good.
Yeah, no, love to talk about it. Agile, Scrum are concepts I've heard a little bit about. We have a member of the community, Gary, who chatted a little bit as well, getting his take on it. So it'll be good to kind of put the two of you guys together, and maybe I'll finally get it. But one thing I want to learn about first is, as a fellow kind of podcaster who's kind of new to the game here, I see in your background you have the 5 a.m. Mester Scrum out there. So tell me a little bit about, what you're working on there, how the podcast got started, what the concept is, why 5 a.m.
Well, 5 a.m. started out because no one else was awake at the time and my house was quiet. So when I started this the year before the big 2020, it was a quiet time. I had some young kids, so it was good and quiet. And it was just free time when you had to commute to work and you had to drive, an hour and a half to work or whatever. It was a decent time, and like I said, it was quiet. The animals are awake. They already woke me up. I was starting my early morning rise stuff, so it worked out perfect.
Awesome. Yeah. So are you still doing it at 5 a.m. or now that
Well, I'm still getting up at 5 a.m., but then people realize I can really tell you were half asleep when you were doing your show. And there really wasn't any audience at the time, so it was just me. And I figured, I'll do it a little bit later. Sometimes I get people to jump in when I do it around between 8:30, though today I was a little bit late. It was almost 9 o'clock when I started. But in that range, you get people to jump on.
Yeah, very cool. So what's the concept here?
So the concept is, well, it's always evolving. One, these podcasts, they always evolve into other things. One of it's me just sharing my knowledge of Agile and Scrum and with people that are in business or IT or Scrum Masters. Just because I have so many years of experience of, 30 some odd years of experience, just sharing it, because you can't give it all to everyone if you're just coaching a couple teams. So you might as well just spin it off. And there's so much to it every day that it never stops. So I do a daily podcast. I just keep it small. If you ever heard of a daily Scrum or a daily stand-up's classic in any business organization. I keep it under 15 minutes. So I kind of want to prove that you can have a show in under 15 minutes. You can do a daily Scrum. It doesn't need to be an hour long. Every time I come to a company, we have an hour-long daily Scrum. Like, what do you talk for about an hour? What are you doing? You don't need that. So that 15-minute window helps. And from a podcasting standpoint or a YouTube perspective or, broadcasting, it makes it easier to produce. The smaller it is, less admin work you got to do, flipping it over, doing a little intro and stuff like that. So
makes sense. Yeah, I mean, I'm impressed. And again, I'm limited in my knowledge of Scrum and Agile, but to be able to produce daily content every day on a topic, you'd ever seem to run out of ideas or worried about like, oh, what are we going to talk about tomorrow?
Well, a lot of it is my own experience too. So even when stuff comes up, I may not talk about it that day. I might have an event. I'll put it in my phone. You put little notes in your phone, and then I'll come back to it and I'll kind of mold it into a topic that I'll do. Um, so I try to bring in real world activity, because one of the things is practical advice and practical and tactical, not necessarily lofty theory. So here's how I apply it. And so a lot of Scrum Masters like that, or a lot of people in the because it relates to them,
Yeah.
right? It's not some grandiose, not to say anything wrong with it, getting a big, huge, expensive consultant company to come in to revamp your whole organization. Like, well, you don't really need that.
Yeah. And it seems to be, resonating with people, as you're saying, because you mentioned it's one of the top ranked agile coaching podcasts. And, and maybe the space is a little bit more niche than others. Nevertheless, though, there's something to be said about being one of the best in the biz. So, what is it that you feel like has allowed you to kind of get this title?
I'm going to say this word: consistency. You'd be amazed how many big billionaires talk about being consistent that are on these podcast things, that you're consistently putting stuff out. By doing that, there's so much content, you build that rapport that they know who you are, and they you're not making something up just do a sales routine. That is really big, and I think why it got ranked the way it does, because I'm out there every day putting stuff out there. And I can tell you a little bit when I use a system where it allows me to be in. I do a podcast, I do all the video, I do YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, business, right? It all goes out at once, and then I found a way to do some more. I found a way to do Twitter and everything with the $10 a month I pay for the software. But it allows you to be in every system, right? Gary Vee talks about you should be putting out 50 pieces of content every day, if you know Gary Vee in the marketing world, right? Well, if I do what I did, I just put out 10, and it's only one person. And that doesn't count a little Instagram photo or something from my show, or a little snippet, in a short, or like a something, or a TikTok or something like that. So, if I'm just one person in a company putting these up, then when you have a company, you can easily hit 50. There's like no.
Yeah, it makes sense. I've been trying to put out a little bit more content myself. Obviously, we do the weekly show here, and I've been, more active on LinkedIn, but I'm impressed with anybody that can really kind of commit to something daily. But consistency is the key. You mentioned that you do some agile coaching, individuals and businesses as well. I'm curious, like on the individual level, how that works, because I always think of agile Scrum as sort of like this team dynamic and the way people maybe work together. But when you're kind of coaching individuals, what is that relationship like?
Well, sometimes I get too eager for my individual coachees, but it's one of those things where I try to help. If they are in the agile business, there's two areas. One, if they are in agile, I try to relate what they're doing to agile thought process and terminology. So, and I try to make them think about it, question what they're doing. Now, if you're doing that, how does that fit into Scrum? Or how does that fit in the agile? Or why do we do this activity in Scrum like we do a sprint review? Right? What is that? How does that relate in business? That's so you can demonstrate and have an endpoint in what you do, right? So and that has, I was doing the coaching, and that has evolved into what I'm offering, and I'm going to be offering in the future, more open, is masterminds. I learned about masterminds, and I learned that masterminds were missing something that I saw in Agile and Scrum, and I combined the two, where I would have a mastermind group of individual coaches where I coach them, but we help establish goals. What do you want to really accomplish? I'm not just sit there to talk about, oh, I had a bad day today, or, oh, this is not working. No. What are your goals? Establish some goals for the quarter, right? and doing quarter, and then we work towards those goals, and we use the mastermind, so there's more than just me giving feedback to those goals. So I made my coaching more into a goal oriented process than just me being your psychiatrist sitting there and solving your problems. Like, what is your goal? What, from a business standpoint, career point, I don't go into the personal coaching, but in that area, where do you want to go? And we work together using, well, how could you do this? How could you do this with your team? How can you experiment with your business? So I kind of put that into that. And then I still have my corporate coaching, which I'm also doing more of, where it's a part-time coaching. So if you ever hear, and this is a big thing in Agile, right? You see on LinkedIn, oh, Agile's dead, Scrum is evil, all this stuff. And I said, well, it's not really, it's just how it's been implemented, who's doing it. And I wanted to start offering a part-time coaching for small businesses and big businesses. I got a contract right now helping, where I'm only coaching like the Scrum Masters, helping with the team, getting them ready, but I'm not there 40 hours a day. So rather than paying the big salary, the big hour rate for 40 hours, I'm just charging for the hours I'm with the team. I'm doing one-on-one coaching with the Scrum Masters, people that own the business managers. So it's a lot less expensive, but they get the Agile mindset. And you're not trying to fill up your time with busy work or anything. I'm just like, I'm really big on getting a lot of value, not spending a lot of time, and having the fun on the way. So my goal is to core that time up to be very valuable when we do meet. Right?
I love that. I think people would appreciate that as well, right? Because everybody's
Yeah.
looking to kind of get the best ROI on their money, on their time. And for context, when you say masterminds, that term, at least correct me if I'm wrong, but I always think of it as kind of a group of people getting together who have similar goals, and then essentially trying to work, give each other feedback, give each other advice, give each other support to help achieve those goals. And then maybe adding almost like this group coaching element to it, which it sounds like you're doing with someone who's maybe a little bit further along or with a bit more expertise to help guide them. Is that right?
Yeah. And what I do at the mastermind, everyone gets to see what their goals are together. We actually use Jira. If you ever hear of Jira, we actually use it to manage what they want to do.
Nice.
And everyone gets to see it, so people can challenge you on how you're doing. And then we make the people in the group present what they have done in their sprint, per se. And we
accountability, right? That's what it's all about.
Accountability. And that's something, if you read any mastermind book, when you create a mastermind, there's no accountability. It just dies.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a key. And it's only one little sentence. You get a whole book, and it's just like one sentence. The accountability is key, but they don't go into it. So I combine the two, because Scrum is very big on accountability, because you have a time box and a time to do it, and you have to show what you do, and people hold you accountable.
I like it.
I'm like, makes perfect sense to me.
Incorporating those principles into the service there. Well, Greg, thanks so much for kind of educating us a little bit about the podcast, agile coaching, and kind of how to blending the methodologies there. For people that want to learn more about you, what you're up to, where should they go?
Well, if they want to find anything about it, they can do like 5 a.m. Mester Scrum, search it. You'll find it everywhere. And one of the things that I just want to add, this one tip to everyone: if you do post on LinkedIn your blog or your video or your podcast, in Bing, it's just full of it. I just noticed it the other day. I went into Bing and I said, everything in LinkedIn shows up in there. So if anybody uses the Microsoft search and you're not posting in LinkedIn, you're missing out, right? It's just platter. But 5 a.m. Mester Scrum, you can find me there. I am relaunching my company, my Idea Communication Networks, and there'll be ways to get a hold of me for doing individual coaching, which you could do in 5 a.m. Mester Scrum too, or corporate coaching.
Awesome. Very much. Thanks very much, Greg. We're looking forward to that upcoming launch, and thank you for being on the show today.
All right. Well, thank you, Dave.